What are the absolute worst decisions that you can make in Oblivion? From actions that'll lock you out of brilliant quest rewards, or even entire quests, to doing things that are needlessly, unapologetically horrible to the residents of Cyrodiil. There are so many opportunities to be evil or screw up in this game, so let's dive right in with number 10. Good people of the Imperial City, welcome to the Arena. The quickest and most straightforward way for one to test their combat skills, garner renown, make a fair bit of money, and even obtain an adoring fan.
Can I follow you around? I won't get in the way.
That's everything we can gain by fighting our way through the ranks and becoming Grand Champion of the Imperial City's arena. 25 consistent victories are all that stands between us and one of 12 new champion titles we can choose from. With the rewards on offer and the simple rinse and repeat nature of these matches, it can be extremely tempting to blitz through the arena all in one go, eventually challenging the Grey Prince for the ultimate title of Grand Champion of the arena. If we do that, we'll have a somewhat tough fight against a quick, sword-wielding orc, though one that is still very much beatable. However, by taking a little more time between matches and getting to know the Grey Prince ahead of time, we can make the final fight significantly easier and obtain a few permanent attribute buffs. The Grey Prince, you see, is curious about his heritage, believing to be the half-orc son of a noble, but unable to prove anything about where he comes from. Before his mother died, though, she gave him the key to the ruined fort of Crowhaven, the place of the Grey Prince's birth, and where he can learn the truth of that. But being Grand Champion doesn't afford him the time to go check it out, so he asks us to in his stead. And if we can pry ourselves away from consecutively winning arena matches for a moment, then Crowhaven does indeed hold the secrets on the origin of the Grey Prince. It also holds his imprisoned and now insane vampire father named Lord Leviticus, as well as a journal chronicling how this man fell in love with an orc and she became pregnant with his child, only to flee and lock Leviticus away upon learning of his vampiric nature, leaving him trapped here for all the years the Grey Prince has been alive, now ravenously hungry for blood. Dispatching him and returning to the arena with his journal, the Grey Prince will first be over the moon and will teach us some skills to permanently buff blade, block, and athletics by 3 each, meaning all of these now can be max leveled to 103. But then he reads the journal, and upon learning the truth of his heritage, the Grey Prince is disgusted.
My whole life has been nothing but a lie. I'm no Grey Prince. I'm a vile, wretched spawn of evil. Please leave me. I can't...
He'll then descend into this inescapable pit of self-pity over his true origins, and all the while, we can continue to fight our way up the ranks of the arena. Now, when reaching the Grand Champion match, it'll be more of a depressing execution than anything with a challenge.
Please, just kill me. Can't you see? It's what I want. I can't live like this, knowing I'm something filthy, something evil. Kill me.
And despite the fact that this match then consists of him just literally standing there and being executed, the crowd will still go wild, and our victory will be described as the impossible. And I don't actually know what's sadder, the Grey Prince dying like this after having all his life's hopes shattered, or being struck down in actual fair combat before learning any truth of his origins, still so full of hope that there's more to his life without yet having achieved that knowledge. Perhaps it would be best for him to die still with that hope, but certainly from a player perspective, as well as providing more content, you definitely don't want to defeat the Grey Prince without first bringing him the truth of his birth, even if it does ruin the short rest of his life. Just west of the Imperial City, outside the main gate and over the bridge towards Coral, lies the small hamlet of Way. And here, we can pick up an early game quest by speaking to Aelwyn Merriwald. He feels like he's completely lost in life, and needing no encouragement from us, will explain who to.
Who did I lose to? Who is my great enemy? Oh, don't laugh. It's a bunch of damn fish.
Now, it is so tempting to pick the laugh in his face option, but that right there is the worst decision we can make for this quest. He'll refuse to speak to us thereafter, and we won't even get the quest to begin with. He also makes us feel kind of bad about it, but backtracking for a second, offering to help instead, Aelwyn will explain that he was in the business of hunting the Remastered slaughterfish and selling their scales to alchemists, but is now being forced into premature retirement after one bit his leg. He needs just 12 more scales though to complete his deal with the alchemist, and we're the lucky adventurer who gets to hunt for them. Remastered slaughterfish only, all of which are found in the immediate waters. A bit of a pain of a quest, but coming back here later, once you have a means to cast Detect Life, can make the whole thing a lot easier. With that done, returning to Aelwyn, he'll be most thankful and award us with the Jewel of the Remastered enchanted ring. A useful thing to carry if you ever find yourself needing to take long dives, though as an Argonian who can already breathe underwater, it's more or less useless to me. Now, here's the evil part. Hereafter, Aelwyn is so excited for his retirement, the freedom to spend time as he chooses, and a total lack of fish. But we can straight up ask him where his savings are, and with a disposition over 70, he will amazingly just tell us.
Well, I'll tell you a secret. I took some of the money I saved and paid a mage to lock the rest of it away in a box inside my house. Nothing can open it except for this key right here. And there ain't no way anyone is getting this key while I'm still breathing. Yes, sir. I worked too hard to collect that money. I'm not about to let anyone steal it from me.
Yeah, let's see about that. So, pickpocketing Aelwyn's key, we'll notice he also has 74 gold just in his inventory, presumably a small offcut of the treasure trove in his house's magical chest, which comes to 22 gold. He paid to get an enchanted chest to safely stash away just 22 gold. The enchantment, in fact, no doubt cost more than this, and what's more, the ring he gave us, the Jewel of the Remastered, fetches a base price by itself of 2,550, and he could have therefore sold this thing for at least half of that price. Look, maybe I'm looking too deep into the finance mechanics of a 2006 game, but still, I feel like we've now just taken advantage of this guy's financial illiteracy, having already been given by far his most precious possession. But if you want to stick just one more evil nail in it, then yes, you can pilfer the small amount of gold that this guy expects to retire on. The town of Skingrad is a mostly upstanding place. People are friendly, houses are fancy, the Count is a little odd but cares about his people, but he's not nearly as odd compared to one local resident named Glarthir. Now, Glarthir has this belief that the entire rest of Skingrad is conspiring against him, spying on him to report back to someone. Possibly the Marikati Selectives, who are sort of an Illuminati-esque inquisition from the First Era, dedicated to disproving that Auriel and Akatosh are the same god, and this is an interesting prospect, but it's clear from Glarthir's general behavior that he is just an incredibly paranoid person. And from the number of books he has scattered about his house, he probably just read the names of all these cults and convinced himself by knowing about them that they would come for him. So believing people are now spying on him, he naturally enlists us to spy on his behalf, to follow 3 NPCs for one entire day of each of their lives, and report back anything suspicious. Now, we can do this somewhat tedious task, and hell, we can even straight up ask these 3 what they think of Glarthir, and whilst all acknowledging he's a bit strange, they're otherwise surprisingly nice about this eccentric wood elf, with no suspicions whatsoever as to what he intends. At the end of each day, we'll report back to Glarthir with the choice to tell him whether or not they're spying, and if you actually have followed every NPC, you'll know quite clearly that none of them are. However, failing to report at least one of these to Glarthir as a spy will mean only one conclusion in his conspiracy-addled brain. So unable to let go of his preconceived worldview, Glarthir will have to further twist it to mean that we too must be in on the whole conspiracy.
Just as I suspected, they've gotten to you too. Not one of them involved in the conspiracy, and you expect me to believe that? Now I know for sure that they are all in on it, and therefore they all have to die, starting with you.
Believe it or not, this is one of the good endings. Provided we defeat Glarthir, we effectively stop a paranoid maniac before he goes on a crazy killing spree. But backtracking a second, if we do report any of these three as spies, whether it's just one, two, or all of them, Glarthir will hand us a note and an upfront 200 gold, instructing us to then go and kill anyone we told him was spying. And silently assassinating any number of these falsely accused will net the further flat reward of 1000 gold. Certainly the best paid outcome to this quest, and you do only have to kill one of them to get the rewards. Though if you're feeling particularly evil, you can just do all three. And in fairness, this does pale in comparison to some of the Dark Brotherhood contracts, and Glarthir's glee at feeling liberated from his self-induced paranoia is, I suppose, good for him. Though who's to say the guy was ever gonna stop here with his crazy thoughts? Eventually, this is only ever gonna end one way. So, the other good thing we can do to avoid bloodying our hands entirely is to simply hand the murder list over to the town guards. They'll then deal with Glarthir themselves, resulting in his death. We'll still get the 200 gold as well as any loot from Glarthir's body and house this way. Or, the final option is to give the death list back to Glarthir, refuse to kill on his behalf, and afterwards we can actually follow him to the victim's house to watch him take matters into his own hands. He will do the murders in this timeline by himself. Though again, this will eventually result in Glarthir getting a visit from the guards and being summarily executed.
This is a restricted area, citizen. Leave now or face the consequences.
Quite barbarically, actually.
You must not have heard. He went crazy and killed David Cerealy with an axe. Nobody can figure out why. It's too bad nobody stopped Glarthir before he went on his killing spree. I guess no one knew how crazy he really was.
Well, that's one way to make me feel bad. Anyway, many interesting outcomes to this quest. Some evil, none altogether good for everyone. So, do you indulge Glarthir's paranoia, or take out this maniac before it's too late? When visiting the Temple District in the Imperial City, you'll probably be approached by this dark elf woman asking for help with an important matter, before directing you to Seridur's house just around the corner. This begins the quest Order of the Virtuous Blood, so named after a group of vampire hunters who are apparently completely ill-equipped to fight any vampires. So they need us, a powerful and battle-hardened warrior, to go and hunt one down. Roland Jenseric was allegedly spotted by Seridur feeding on and murdering his own girlfriends. So exploring Roland's house for clues to his whereabouts, we can find a love letter referring to a cabin in the woods where this couple used to go. It sounds tragically as though they were very much in love, and is kind of odd that Roland waited all this time to indulge his vampiric desires. That is, unless he turned recently perhaps. But heading out to Roland's cabin and finding him there, he has a completely different telling of events.
That bastard! Seridur dares accuse me of being a vampire? Me? Ha! He's the one who is the vampire. Ralphina was the love of my life. For the first time I had a positive outlook. Then I saw Seridur looking at her with those coveting eyes. That night I decided to follow Ralphina. I wanted to see where she went on her walks. When she stopped in the garden and Seridur stepped out of the shadows, my heart sank. Then suddenly he was upon her. She seemed entranced as he wrapped his arms around her and sank his teeth into her neck. I burst from my hiding place and attacked Seridur. He became startled for a moment and tossed Ralphina aside. She fell to the ground, and I heard a sickening crack as her head struck a stone. I was no equal to Seridur. He knocked me down in one quick movement. As I lost consciousness, I saw him laugh and then run away.
So going by Roland's story, Seridur was actually using Ralphina as a thrall to feed off. She may have been cheating, but more likely her free will was twisted by vampiric charm. And Roland, in his rage, inadvertently caused Seridur to kill her. And to cover his tracks, Seridur has turned the story around on Roland. And convincing as this telling of events is, backed up by the letter we found, we still have no way of being 100% on the facts at this point, and therefore have to choose. choose. So let's first trust our initial employer, do what we originally came here to do, and kill Roland. Serida will simply say we've done a great service, award us 250 gold, and become incredibly cold towards us thereafter.
I think you should leave.
Yeah, this is without a doubt one of the worst choices we can make in the entire game, and not just from a moral standpoint. Can you not tell by those eyes, for starters, just what Serida really is? I feel like in both Oblivion and Skyrim, vampires are obvious to us the player, but no one else. But Roland, of course, is telling the truth, and Serida is ingeniously hiding his vampiric nature by masquerading as a vampire hunter. But pursuing this route, we can learn about a cave that Serida sometimes ventures out to, and heading there ourselves, we will indeed encounter him and learn the truth. He intends to kill us, and then the rest of the Order. So instead dealing with him once and for all and heading back to Roland, he'll be very grateful for our assistance and decide, ironically, that the Order of the Virtuous Blood should continue. He can be found later in Serida's basement, and will gift us the much better upfront rewards of the Ring of Sunfire. Reflecting spell damage up to 25% and resisting disease makes it one of the most valuable rings in the game. But possibly more importantly, keeping Roland alive opens up one of the best, most straightforward ways to earn money for the entire rest of the game. As honorary member of the Order of Virtuous Blood, we will be paid 250 gold for every vampire dust that we bring from a vampire we slew, meaning we can easily net at least 2,000 extra gold probably for every cave of vampires we clear in-game. And if you collected the dust from the vampires in Serida's cave, then we can start with that right away. It's a seriously good ongoing opportunity to make money, and crazy to compare it against just the 250 gold that Serida awards us by comparison. And there's also the fact that in that timeline, we'd leave a dangerous and evil vampire roaming the streets. Zero Visibility is without a doubt one of the funniest little quests that we can find in-game, and can be started by asking the Roxy Innkeep about rumours. This will then begin the quest, Zero Visibility, after learning that all the residents in the nearby village of Ailswell recently disappeared without a trace. So heading over there ourselves to investigate and detect life can make this somewhat easier, we'll learn that the residents aren't in fact gone, but just invisible.
It was sort of fun at first, but the novelty is definitely worn off now.
They suspect that this was the doing of Ankatar, a wizard living in a nearby tower whose experiments have caused nothing but trouble for Ailswell. So we then head down the hill to find him, and that's easier said than done, as Ankatar is also invisible.
Yes, I have been working on a new invisibility spell. As you can see, it works quite well. Why? Oh, really? Everyone in town? That must have been what all the shouting was about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, the guy's pretty wrapped up in his own little world, too much to notice the problems that he's causing for his neighbours, though he does assure us that the effect should wear off for them, maybe in a year or two. He also gives us a scroll to reverse it immediately, and starts to warn us about something else, but stops himself. Now, first of all, you will absolutely want to bring that back up again, as he'll then give you the Ring of Protection, saying you probably don't need it when using the scroll, but it's worth wearing. And yeah, you definitely want to wear that ring, as not doing so will utterly destroy your luck points, knocking mine down by a huge 47. But otherwise, casting the scroll in the center of town will return the townsfolk to normal, and the stunted luck, whilst initially an issue, is fixable by just visiting a shrine. The real worst outcome to Zero Visibility involves behaving like a complete idiot. See, the scroll that Ankatar gives us can only be equipped when standing in the middle of Ailswell. However, after doing so and equipping the scroll, there's nothing to say we can't simply run off a fair ways before casting it. And indeed, doing this, the quest will update saying we screwed it up and need to return to the wizard.
What do you mean, you need another one? I believe the instructions were very clear. Stand in the middle of Ailswell and read the scroll. Hard to believe that anyone could find that too complicated. Lucky for you, I made a backup scroll. Here, but I don't want to see you again.
Well, that was lucky, but still, you can't expect this hero to have any more luck on the second attempt. Our luck's still been damaged by the first one after all. So, returning to Ankatar, again unsuccessful, he'll be utterly bewildered by our sheer stupidity.
You wasted it again, didn't you? It is truly pathetic that the fools in Ayleswell actually trusted you to save them. Now, get out of my sight before I make you sorry you meddled in my affairs. I take no responsibility for your stupidity.
I mean, we may be total idiots in this timeline, but surely that doesn't excuse him from all responsibility. Though the response of the invisible innkeeper is even more pissed off towards us, but also funny.
What? Ankatar gave you 2 scrolls and you wasted them both? We trusted you to help and you betrayed us. It would be best if you left this town and never came back.
Quite a strong response, if you ask me, but in fairness, we did fail at an exceedingly simple task, not once, but twice. And it's too bad for Ayleswell that they chose to enlist the help of Cyrodiil's biggest idiot. An awful decision, no doubt about that, but an equally hilarious one. And the fact that the developers went out of their way to script this whole outcome just goes to show how well they knew us even 20 years ago. Collecting Daedric artifacts is always a big part of Elder Scrolls games, with the items in question very often being the most unique, interesting, and powerful things we can possibly obtain in-game. It's always a cool achievement to obtain all of them and display them in your designated hero museum. In Oblivion though, if you are planning to complete the main questline, then the quest Blood of the Daedra will require you to give up one such of these artifacts. It doesn't matter which, but one artifact needs to be obtained, then permanently removed from the game. And if you're not fully aware of the list of Daedric artifacts on offer and what each of them does, it can be a bit of a stab in the dark, choosing just which one. Fortunately, if you want a detailed breakdown and ranking for them all, then I have a video for that which you can find in the description. But to summarize a few things relating to this quest, one of the worst choices you can make is to simply follow the quest marker for this one. That's because this will lead you to the Shrine of Azura, since it's one of the lower level Daedric quests, wherein you'll obtain Azura's Star. Without question, one of the most unique and best Daedric artifacts in the game, which is always going to be useful. As the only reusable soul gem receptacle, Azura's Star paired with Soul Trap is the only way to farm a steady supply of souls and recharge our weapons in a sustainable way. And giving it up means you'll always be at the mercy of having to find new soul gems or Vala stones. So definitely make sure not to follow the quest marker for this, but what should you sacrifice instead? Well, personally, my 2 top picks for getting rid of are either the Mask of Clavicus Vile or the Savior's Hide from the Hircine quest. Both of these items have armor ratings and enchantments that are completely superseded by other in-game gear. The Morag Tong armor from the Unearthing Mehrunes Razor quest beats Savior's Hide, and the Crusader helmet from Knights of the Nine beats Clavicus Vile's mask. That said, both of these aren't available to get until levels 17 and 20 respectively. But there's also the 3 staffs, Sanguine Rose, Wabberjack, and Skull of Corruption, which are more novelty distractions than fundamentally useful, and Malakath's Hammer, Volendrung, whilst decent enough for earlier blunt builds, is also eventually beaten by later game equipment. So take your time for this quest, and weigh up just how useful each artifact is for your build before deciding which to sacrifice. Cheydinhal is a beautiful town. I feel like I can't start talking about it without first saying that. The purple woodwork and gothic designs amidst the bright fairy tale waterways make for one of the most pleasant cities to exist in the whole of Tamriel. A shame that the Count is a complacent ruler who doesn't give a damn about his people, and the captain of the guard is utterly corrupt and opportunistic enough to take advantage of this. Ulrich Cleveland has been leveling fines against the good people of Cheydinhal for just about anything he could stretch to encompass the definition of a crime. Where that money goes? Well, it's pretty much an unspoken thing that Ulrich is pocketing the fine cash for himself, and we'll look at that more in a minute. One of the biggest victims of this unjust taxation, though, is a Dunmer named Aldos Othram, brought up 6 times recently on drunk and disorderly behavior, to the extent he's had his own house seized from him after being unable to pay the fines. We'll need him to testify against Ulrich before before bringing the guard captain to justice. But upon speaking to Aldos, feeling totally driven into a corner, he goes to his house and confronts the guards. Then, when this leads to further fines and eventually arrest, Aldos chooses the resist option, resulting in his swift and tragic death.
Oh no. They killed him? I can't believe this. Ever since his wife passed at the hands of the bandits, his life has been miserable. There are no more options left. Ulrich must be dealt with, and actions speak louder than words. You must do something for me. Go tell Ulrich that I have some information that incriminates him. Tell him to come alone or he won't get it.
If it's not clear, then Levana, the Dark Elf who originally told us about this whole thing going on, plans to deal with Ulrich herself, to exact justice at the same level that Aldos was treated to. So doing just that, luring this corrupt arsehole to Levana's house, he then begins to threaten her.
I'm not going to stand here and debate this all night. You give me that evidence and I'll consider not having you executed.
As you wish, Ulrich. Come, my lovelies. Your feast has arrived.
Ulrich will then be totally paralyzed and slowly devoured by rats. Disturbing enough to watch in-game, and I can only imagine the real thing would have been even more terrifying. Though it is somewhat poetic that a man who believed his status made him more powerful than everyone else spends his final moments completely powerless to stop his horrific fate. Unfortunately, in this timeline, Levana is forced to face justice for her crimes. Heroic as this was for the citizens of Cheydinhal, she'll still have to serve a sentence for murder, though reduced on account of it being self-defense, but rotting in a cell for the rest of the game all the same. We will still be paid some gold for services to the city though. Fortunately, there's a more legal way of doing things, where the only one who winds up in a jail cell is Ulrich himself. See, a guy called Garrus, second in command of the guard, will also want this tyrant dealt with, and with the key from him to Garrus's room, we can find an unsent letter to Ulrich's cousins, explaining how he's sending the fine money to them to construct a summer keep. A gross abuse of power that the citizens of Cheydinhal have been paying for, and more than enough to get him locked behind bars. Will again be rewarded with gold, more so for dealing with Ulrich legally, and Levana, though feeling like Ulrich deserved harsher punishments, will be grateful for us dealing with him, and more importantly, free to continue living her life. She won't have to trade her freedom to get rid of Ulrich. So as satisfying as the first decision is in the moment, it's better all round, I think, for everyone to deal with this without further bloodshed. Though, if you do want a little bit of bloodshed as well, there's nothing to stop you from breaking into the jail cell later and administering additional vigilante justice on Ulrich. Though nobody will acknowledge this in any further dialogue, and honestly, it's almost a worse punishment for him having to endure this daily imprisonment, feeling utterly powerless not just for a few seconds, but for who knows how long, maybe the rest of his life. If you want a hefty payment of cash, and don't mind delving into multiple Ayleid ruins, then you'll want to pay a visit to Umbacano in the Talos Plaza district of the Imperial City. The guy is a rich and passionate collector of Ayleid artifacts, and will have a particular interest in these specific Ayleid statues. There are 10 in total across Cyrodiil, and all we've got to do is find one of them and bring it to Umbacano. The closest one to the Imperial City is deep down in Vilverin, to the northeast here, just by where we escape from prison, and it's buried deep in the ruins in a chamber guarded by swinging axe traps. When shown to Umbacano, he'll immediately pay us 500 gold, promising the same for any more we bring him, as well as a bonus payment of 5,000 if we gather all 10, making for a total 10,000 in profits from this quest. After finding 2 statues, he'll also provide a map pointing to some of the other sites, but ultimately we will still have to find some of the Ayleid ruins ourselves. If you want to keep a note of where they all are, then pause the video and take a screenshot now. However, this is not the only quest we can obtain from Umbacano. After gathering a few of these statues, he'll also send us to obtain an Ayleid tablet in a quest called Nothing You Can Possess. And then, after this, the hunt for an Ayleid crown in a quest titled Secrets of the Ayleids. But here's where you want to be careful. Whilst completing Secrets of the Ayleids is something you definitely want to do eventually, what the game doesn't tell you is that you'll be locked out from completing the collector quest in doing so, permanently locking out that juicy bonus of 5,000 gold if you didn't already obtain it. So without spoiling specifically why this becomes an issue, let me just leave you with the simple tip to complete the collector before doing Secrets of the Ayleids. Umbacano will display his ancestor statues in this little cabinet afterwards, and if you do want to, then you can also steal them back to display in one of your own houses later on. Reynold and Gilbert Germain have a string of quests for you to play through. The first is Separated at Birth. Simply find Reynold on the streets of Coral, and he will drunkenly explain how people annoyingly keep mistaking him for someone they saw in Cheydinhal, before sending us over there to get to the bottom of this once and for all. It'll transpire that Reynold has a secret twin named Gilbert, and the two were separated at birth. After reuniting, this will lead into Legacy Lost, where we're tasked now to track down their old family estate of Weatherly so that the brothers can reclaim it as their own. Finding and liberating the place from ogres will again complete this quest and gain further gratitude from the two for our help. A few days after doing this, you'll then want to speak to Fathis Ules in Coral, a prestigious dark elf who frequents the Oak and Crosier Tavern and also the city's Thieves Guild fence. He'll explain that the father of the two brothers actually obtained his wealth and estate as a successful member of the Thieves Guild, but that he eventually stole a precious sword called the Honorblade of Coral and greedily kept it for himself. Eventually, his estate was sacked by ogres, as we saw, and they took the blade back to Redguard Valley Cave. Fathis still wants that blade after all these years, so simply obtaining and returning it to him, he'll be grateful and award us with a leveled amount of gold. For me, it was 1,500. However, by giving it back to Fathis, we've unknowingly locked ourselves out of one of the best items in the game. We also won't be liked nearly as much by the Germains after accusing their father of being a thief, with no evidence to back up that claim.
I no longer have a desire to speak with you. I appreciate what you've done in the past, but that's just what it is. The past.
Well, I mean, at least they still acknowledge that we did help them out at one point. But backtracking a second for a better outcome to this quest, the Honorblade, of course, was originally stolen from Castle Coral itself, and they have just as much claim for it back, if not more, than Fathis does. So returning it instead to Laith Waverick at the castle, he'll be incredibly grateful, taking back the blade and instead giving us one of the best shields in the game. The Escutcheon of Coral fortifies our endurance by 10 points when worn, but more importantly, it reflects 35% of all physical damage back onto the attacker. It's a crazily good enchantment which can make simply blocking one of the best offensive techniques in the entire game. It is also a leveled piece of loot though, meaning the stats will be different depending on which level we obtain it, with the maximum ones being gained at levels 25 plus, so you will want to wait until then before doing the quest. This time also, with evidence that their father stole the Honorblade, the Germains will acknowledge his past wrongdoings and show us even more gratitude for correcting them, in the form of 4 soul gems. Now, a powerful, unique item like this shield is definitely better than Fathis' simple reward of money, though do be warned that by choosing this path, we will also lose Fathis as a fence. He'll just refuse to speak to us anymore. So perhaps siding with him isn't an out-and-out totally terrible decision, but I definitely lean more towards returning the Honorblade to the castle as the better of these two outcomes. Finally then, one of the worst choices you can make in Oblivion is completing the main quest line too early. As pressingly urgent as the Oblivion crisis is presented to be in the story, there is actually no need to complete any of this at any specific time. Just run off, do other stuff, and aside from the many Oblivion gates dotted around the landscape, you won't even realize that Maroon's Dagon is invading Tamriel. But that's just the thing. The Oblivion gates themselves are some of the best opportunities to obtain powerful loot in the game. Most notably, after closing each of these, we'll obtain a Sigil Stone, some of the most powerful artifacts for enchanting, whose effects again scale with our level. The best are Transcendent Sigil Stones, obtained from level 17 onwards. These usually come with one offensive aspect and one defensive, with the applied effect depending on whether it's used to enchant a weapon or worn item. There are are 30 different sets of effects in total, with their magnitudes more often than not beating the rates we can obtain at an enchanting table. We can apply almost any effect in the game if we have the right sigil stone, ranging from fire damage, soul trap, water walking, chameleon, you name it. But of course, the sigil stone we get will be random, and to get more just involves closing more Oblivion gates, of which there are around 60 that'll spawn in one playthrough. Of course, you will have to close some gates across the course of the main storyline, but I think only like 5 are absolutely mandatory, 12 at most, so mostly these gates will be left at your discretion. Now, completing the main questline, however, in fact starting the second to last main quest called Paradise, which is a point of no return of sorts, will lead into the end of the game, closing shut the jaws of Oblivion, and by extension every Oblivion gate in Tamriel forever. You'll obviously lose the chance to obtain any more sigil stones after this, but that's not all. Daedric items and ingredients will no longer be readily available. There is fortunately the Oblivion Garden in Frostcrack Spire for some things, though that doesn't have everything, especially mob drops. And if there's 2 specific items in Oblivion, by which I mean the Plains of Oblivion, not the entire game, which you absolutely do not want to miss, then it's the Hatred's Heart Mace and Hatred's Soul Bow. With the bow, at least, possibly the mace as well, being the most powerful in the game. And these can be obtained reliably from the Oblivion gates outside Coral, by heading into the sunken tower just behind the gate where we enter, which you'll get to by heading north over a fallen gate and finding a hidden door about here on the map. Then simply proceed through the tunnels and up the tower to obtain both of these things at the top. And the Coral Gate isn't the only time you can get these. There's actually 7 different Oblivion worlds that can spawn through each gate, so you can get the same world again in another gate. There's like a 1 in 7 chance. And this one is quite recognizable by the sheer number of towers surrounding this central one. So absolutely make sure to get the Hatred gear before completing the main questline, but I'd also recommend just farming some sigil stones whilst you can as well. You can effectively rush each of these gates, especially with high speed, so getting these stones doesn't even take that long. But let me know down in the comments any more opportunities to be evil that you found in Oblivion, as well as any choices you straight up just regret making. Huge thank you as always to the patrons for going the extra mile to support the channel. You can find more on that in the description, as well as some affiliates from brands I like that'll support the channel as well if you just happened to be buying something from them anyway. Notably Displate for some great art, or Gamer Subs for some great drinks. Other than that, thank you for watching, I'm Sam Bram, and be seeing you